with the cover of Who Was Cleopatra, Time magazine was going with the Lost Tribes, Lost Knowledge story with a brother with a straw in his nose. Now maybe that's something African, I don't know, but that shit looked like a sweetheart straw. Got white and red. And y'all tell me, maybe I don't know, maybe that's some African bone or something. That looked like a damn straw. And I don't know if no elders coming up taking no pictures for no Americans with no damn straws in their nose. And so the story is really about the whites talking about dialogue, about who was first and where real knowledge came from and what happens when we kill these black people. Because it's lost tribes, lost knowledge about what happens when the people with the knowledge die. That's really what it's about. And so it's a thing, you know, it's like somebody having to wait before they got the body. They're humming and singing and shit and calling the tune, and they got the casket. And I mean, y'all saw this one. This is September 16th, U.S. News and World Report about the early man. And you know how they end up with some shit, they always end up somewhere in Whiteville. So well, really, the real man, he emerged somewhere near the state of Is It Real? See, some of y'all call it Israel. Is it real? That's what it is. And they end up walking around, and of course, you know, they come out with who's who, and of course, it's always some white guy looking like somebody off of TV. Is the emerged man, you know. And I used to do a little TV show. They used to have an ad. I don't know if I still have one up here, but they used to run it at Newsweek, and it showed an ape and another ape, and then another ape and another ape, and then they had a white man in the briefcase, you know. And I did a little TV show, and we talk about that, about impersonations, imposturing, impersonating someone, and that's a psychological weakness as well, is the desire to impersonate something that you aren't. And they have great desires of imitating you. Their children imitating you. We don't even need to start about how many things they do to be like us, you know. And so here was another one they did. This is Time magazine, July 8th, 91. Who are we? Beasts. Don't say that, but that's what it is. American kids are getting a new and divisive view of Thomas Jefferson, Thanksgiving, and the 4th of July. Now, I'm sure nobody has any dispute about Thanksgiving, and that Thomas Jefferson was a Rosicrucian, Illuminati, Masonic, slave owning, and dabbled into our race for sex. So I don't know what's divisive about that, but the truth can be divisive. See, it isn't that it's wrong, it's divisive, it starts shit, you know? And so it's no problem when no one's uttering it. But they're going through these dialogues publicly. These are some of their most read, most influential. If a person never, you have to remember about what you see when you look at something. If they never, ever read it, they see the cover. And if they never bought it, they see the radical new view of where we came. There ain't nothing radical about it. It ain't changed. It's the same view. It's the radical new way you have of digesting your inferiority. But they aren't doing it because they want to give us some exalted honor. I suspect that they believe that to convince the other whites that they must kill us, they must tell them that we are first. They must tell them that we are the direct descendants of God Almighty, and they must tell them that they had hidden and stored away the knowledge of our supremacy, and they have been emulating it and reduplicating it and impersonating it. And now, at the 500th anniversary of the old white boy Columbus, they want to celebrate the rising from the dead as they were. And they now must do that to get the psychological power amongst the other whites to fight us. In fact, they have one in the Afrocentric article. They talked to former Secretary of Education Bennett, and they asked him about the Afrocentric thing. He said, "This is bullshit." I mean, he goes all off about it, and that's very important to see that this was the gatekeeper of the knowledge. Then he made him gatekeeper of the drugs. I don't know what he's watching now. I think he's one of them foundations, but the point of it is that the viewpoints are now being flushed into the public, and for whatever the reason, I do not believe that they're doing this because they want to give us high honor. You end up getting caught in certain dilemmas like this, and I didn't really like it, where you got one guy over here, the Harvard Afrocentric guy and the temple Afrocentric guy, and both of them work for white people. That's what but you get the perception that you're getting two sides. This guy here says the Afrocentric thing ain't too important. You gotta name his name. His name is Gates. He's chair of the Afro-American Studies at Harvard University, author of a forthcoming book called Loose Cannons. And I bet you I've read that book. That book is about black people pressing black things such that we're fucking up Negro things. and so the loose cannon thing is, if y'all just be quiet, my thing will work a lot better. And we're going to talk about those type of people when we talk about the making of the Negro, the boule, the black male prestigious secret society that sells our ass down in Greek esoterica, as well as compromises ourselves by never agreeing to be any better than second place. And we're going to read the names of all of the New York chapters on the current list. Last time I was here at the Slave Theater, I read a list that went to 69. Now I got the motherfuckers up to yesterday. So we're gonna talk a bit about them. And I didn't really like way Brother Asante dialogues about Afrocentrism. I don't believe that we're asking the white man to just include us in a sea of discussion. No, we want the bad shit out and the right shit in. It's no, will you just let me in and buy my book and let me sell you a little something Afrocentric and include me in your thing? No, that's not what this is about. But the perception is given, if you read the two articles, I wouldn't bet on either horse to win a race. And yes, I'll be going to Temple University soon. I stand an account for my dialogues. I have no problem about saying what I say, but I don't like this type of picking two people on the same side to give the perception that you have different viewpoints. And if they could have picked a black college and had somebody from a black perspective who don't have to bite butt for Afrocentrism to give a dialogue, because that's nowhere in here. And so we would need something like that for it to come out right. In fact, they even talked about over here earlier a group that's operating in Washington that's going through the fight with the Smithsonian over the Smithsonian being correct. And last week I gave a lecture at Howard, and a member of the organization was there, and I made a point of talking about the importance of the moderates fighting with the beast about over what is correct. And that's evolutionary involvement of our community, because too often the moderates never really cared. You see, you must be a moderate when you will go to the Smithsonian. If you don't know who Smithsonian is and how it got there, and what secret society he was interconnected with, and why the museum is a reflection of their values, and how you cannot appeal or reason with them about something that they cannot compromise on, that is a moderate engagement. There's nothing wrong with that. I have no problem about that, as they tangle up the white people, as if somehow they came to a deal that would relieve the problem. And that's all right if they go do that, because we don't seek to prove anything with them. There's no way if we could ever sit down and come to some conclusion, and if they would just walk up off the table and surrender everything. And when we talk a little bit later about Alzania, you will see why there is a very, very difficult problem in liberating Africans under an ANC focal point. Focal point meaning that they were picked by a certain group of whites to be the centralizing, unified negotiation force for the Africans, and I'll explain to you why it would never work. Washington Post, Friday, just Friday, new evidence of Eve, theory of humans, African roots defended. Here's a brother that had come out with time dating the stuff, and then he died. I think he was about 59 years old, Brother Wilson. And now they've even come out, said scientists yesterday offered new genetic evidence to bolster the controversial claim that all living humans share a single African ancestor, a woman who lived about 200,000 years ago and whose descendants swept across the earth, replacing a more primitive human species as they went. And it went on to say that this is going to be published in Science today, and it compares a special form of genetic material taken from contemporary people from around the world, and suggests the family tree of modern humans has its roots firmly planted in sub-Saharan Africa. It's long been accepted that human evolution began in Africa about 2.5 million years ago with the appearance of Homo habilis, whatever that is he's talking about. about 1 million years later, with species gave rise to Homo erectus, the first human ancestor to migrate out of Africa and to populate southern Eurasia. The new findings strongly suggest that the latest major step in the process, the rise of the modern human beings, or Homo sapiens, also occurred in Africa. And they're arguing with that each other again in the Jewish magazine. Same people on Newsweek, on the Washington Post, that's the Catherine Graham newspaper. And so simultaneously, while they're publicly trying to ease our apprehensions of them with certain plausible recognitions of who we are, it's like someone revealing who your father is before they killed you. And of course, we don't need to pick it up under those circumstances, but simultaneously, while they're doing that, they're doing some other things that we should be aware of as we monitor the onslaught of the New World Order. It was very clear that you heard Bush the other day say that he was going to put away the nuclear arsenal. I would suggest that if we had an opportunity, you might want to go check the shit, because I don't believe they ever built the shit in the first place. Now, someone could say, well, how would they do that? You trying to tell me they're going to start telling the truth about how many bombs they made? And each bomb cost $37 million, and you're going to tell me they made every one of them, now they're going to destroy them or hide them, so you would have never seen them used, never got close enough to the fence where they stormed, can't work on the shit, and so now somehow they're going to destroy something they never had, and they're going to just wipe away billions of dollars of money. See, they give away money so big, they got us fighting over shit. They even got reverse shit going on. They just stole so much, they done wiped out the whole fleet of banks to say, give them out billions of dollars. And then you ask for $50 to go to college, and I'm going to say, sorry, you ain't going to take this shit out at 20% interest or something. but they got this other, they got unlimited money. They going to feed the Russian, they feed the East European, they going to feed everybody, but you. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But simultaneously, they're playing up the United Nations. How many of you all have been to the United Nations in the last month? Quite frankly, you 3 or 4 or 5 of you who raised your hand have probably been about the most number I have ever seen as I have gone around the country, because basically we have not set ourselves up with the United Nations agenda. When I was at the slave theater, I asked them how often did they go there and antagonize the opposition, who walk in and out of the doors every day. They can't sleep in there. Walk in and out of the doors every day. How often do we actually put pressure on the people who are pressuring us? And somehow we've been listening to a lot of people, but we still don't know how to go to the core of where the operation is, such that we keep doing shit, but we don't seem to dent or hurt them. So somehow we have to reconstruct what we do now. When the Bush ran the Persian Gulf War thing down, he set the United Nations up as the use of force spot. Hey, where do we go when we want to kick somebody's ass legally? Well, we go over here to where we united the nations. And the Security Council will give us the authority to kick their ass legally. So they keep. So, brother, just stop me, because we can say the same shit. I know the shit. We say the same shit. Don't miss that. So, where do you go to get the spot where you can legally kick somebody's ass? You go to the United Nations. So, that's where they went to, where they united the nations to sanction the ass kicking. And so you gotta pick out, you got the 5 people there, 5 countries that make up the so-called security force. The permanent members. And isn't it interesting, for as long, I remember a bunch of niggas used to be curious, man, the motherfucking Chinese, they gonna save our ass, and motherfucking Russian and communists gonna save our ass. And when the motherfucker came up to stop an ass kicking, both them motherfuckers took a dive. The Chinese abstained and the Soviets voted yes. Which meant that we have been hearing a lot of shit. So I don't have any room in my strategy for the isms. I have to be very direct. I love Castro, but I ain't into the isms. And so we touted the isms for a long time, that somehow they would offer us safety and sanctity. And shit, the Russians say, I say, come over here, Russian. You say, I'm hungry, chief. I'm hungry, bro, man. Say, well, cut that Castro loose, motherfucker. I need some bread. Castro? Fuck Castro. That's what we do. He said, give me them 11,000, man. Tell you, man, you have them. Check out when they bombed Gaddafi. The night they bombed Gaddafi, they asked Schultz on the TV, said, well, aren't you afraid the Russians gonna help them? He said, oh, we talked to them 48 hours ago, they all left the country. You know, they did that. Same thing in Grenada. They could have saved Maurice Bishop if they chose to. They took a dive. Panama, they could have stopped it if they took a dive. How you gonna go in and take them up of the country 1 month and then turn right around and tell another guy to get out of a country for doing what he saw you do in Panama? Come on. Something's going on. And Noriega's a good example of an informant betrayed. He big that butt as long as helped kill his own leader. He informed on him, sold drugs for him, and when they told him to go down there and assassinate Ortega and kill the revolution in Nicaragua, and he said no, he said, well, your ass out, motherfucker. He could Poindexter left that meeting and went right there to the National Security Council and they wrote his ass death assignment. And I'll say that again, any of you informants at different times during the night, we're going to come up with examples. I'm going to remind you of these people, because if Noriega sit there long enough and be cool, they may let him go. But they got his ass on the wall, and as long as they got him on the wall, he been cool. He trying to play ball because he ain't revealed half the shit he could tell. See, when they convict his ass, he gonna get to telling shit. See, but then we ain't gonna be able to hear him. He gonna be too far away. Be locked up in one of them jails. We can't get too good from up in there. So we have to be consciously aware of that they're moving in that way. But what happened very interestingly, and I have an article up here, Nakasone. Y'all remember Nakasone? That was the white Japanese leader who said America only had one problem, holding itself down. Who was it? Right. Right. And so now he's working in some other things, and he said, well, you know, Japan and Germany, the two defeated powers of World War II, we ain't on the Security Council, but we finance a lot of y'all shit. So we going in. But they don't even have no military. So they can't, in fact, they used the Persian Gulf War to put legislation in Japan and legislation in Germany that allowed them to begin to assemble these forces. They ain't ready yet. But now they going in, so Nakasone suggested that the G7 be the leadership grouping that actually tells the Security Council 5 what to do. The G7. Now what's the G7?
That's the economic group.
Right, that's the overt alliance. That's the overt alliance of the so-called 7 industrialized democratic dictatorships. Y'all remember the guy that had on Saturday Night Live, Mr. Subliminal? You know, he say shit like, we're democratic dictators. You know, he talks and he double talks at the same time. Yeah. Anyway, that's about what they be saying when they get a cold word. But Nakasone was basically saying that this G7 actually is a better leadership grouping in terms of coordinating world events. Now, how many of y'all been to a G7 meeting? Well, that doesn't spell good for us, because that means that there's some meeting that we don't get to, and since they got developed, and underdeveloped, we too far away from the developed to get into the meeting. See, them is the developed cadre. The developing cadre is the moat between us and the so-called underdeveloped. But we ain't been underdeveloped. We've been attacked, and we just didn't accidentally not put it together. We've been held back, and we'll get into that a little better. But the point of it is that he wants to offer the G7 as a new leadership grouping. But if you go around the African community all over the United States, there's no G7 dialogue, which means that as we talk about Ku Klux Klan, and even presidents and congressmen and local local corporations who harass us, we still have not put in focus, again, the core or the arteries of white supremacy. Somehow, in our dialogue, there must be some G7 strategy. Now, the last meeting was in London, but the one before that was in Houston. Now, we should have been down there kicking their ass. I mean, literally. Now, the G7, of course, is a leadership grouping that was first started in France in 1976. Now, pick up on that shit. That should ring a bell. New World Order. The first meeting of the G7 was in France in 1976. Now, that should draw you to 1776. Yep. France. Again. But also, you should know that in 75, and then you all got the book, Trilateralism. Holly Sakar is the co-editor of 25 or 30 different authors. Many people buy the books that I show in the real laborious dialogue and stuff, so they get the books, but Then they say, well, Buck Coakley, I got the book on trilateralism, but I don't understand it yet. Well, that's where the tapes come in. It's kind of breaking the language down and trying to translate it into a digestible form. But it was the Trilateral Commission that went to Gerald Ford and set up the annual economic summits that had resulted in the establishment of a G7. And if you were into Masonry, you understand where they go with the G. Because that too means something to them. And 7, of course, means something. And 76, of course, means something to them as well. These are laced in sub-meanings as well. No more than the New World Order on the dollar bill is in sub-meanings. But look at how many times white people in articles say, Bush has a new world plan called New World Order. Well, if he thought of the shit, why the shit on George Washington dollar bill? I mean, if this is George Bush shit, why George Washington was talking about shit? Which means that they always want to make like it's something just happened. It's something new. It's the same old stuff been coming since Kipling read it as White Man's Burden. Bush even call it the burden of leadership. Somebody else call it manifest destiny. They've been, Cecil Rhodes, unify the world under the English-speaking language. Everybody has had a buzzword for kicking ass and closing the doors. So they have set this thing up, and it remains unattacked. When we went to New York last, Brother Baruti and Brother Tim, we were staying, we were at the slave, they had to stay in some hotel in downtown Manhattan. Brothers went around the corner to where the Trilateral Commission office at. You can't even get past the motherfucking lobby. You can't get in the lobby. Now, but they got to come in and out. Now, that don't make them unapproachable. It just means that we cannot all go to the office. But that's important because unless you threaten them directly, they feel no threat. Everything, TV, radio, movies, all of these things insulate them from the real feelings that we have. And so there's some of them that know how we really feel, but they don't tell some of the biggest of them because they only get paid to control us. See? So we know where they are at the top, but somehow there's a game that they keep us lined up with through the middle. We can't seem to get through them, but we need a little direct attack. We got to go directly to the ones that we can pinpoint. See, there must be a trial of these people. How many people here are older than 50 years old? Well, you all should look at each other and get together and form a little elders committee. Elders committee. See, when we catch a motherfucking Newark and he don't do right, we ought to bring the facts before the elders and allow them to sit over the trial of the perpetrators. We'll do this. So the elders must operate in a way to make people accept their jurisdiction. And then we must have enforcement to enforce the dispensation of the elders so that we can enforce the rules, because no thing can work without rules and enforcement of the rules. Everybody had a right to break them if you can take the punishment. There's nothing wrong with that. But we must have this. We must have the way. Somebody say, well, brother, you didn't call who killed Harold Washington. They say, well, why don't you go to the Justice Department? I'm going to go to the Justice Department before they the perpetrators. It gets me every time somebody in an election problem say, we ought to bring in the Justice Department. You're going to bring the beast in. You're going to take a local beast and bring in a national beast. They're all in the same beast, man. You know, I just left Cincinnati and they had a book there talking about Romulus and Remus. In fact, I talked about it a long time as to take the beast in the 3 6s. But in the Romulus and Remus, they say this is a story for a group of people that have no known origin. That's it. Romulus and Remus, the 2 little children sucking the nipples of the wolf. That's why that milk don't go good in your stomach, because you're not no cow. But it go all right with him. Beast milk go good in white stomach. It do, very much so, because he of that nature. It don't go good with you. But now they selling this shit for $5.99. You can buy some shit that if you eat it, it go down better. They got this lactose removal or something. What they got going? They got some commercials. They be trying to put it on black shows and stuff too, so make us think we're gonna buy the stuff, so it can go down better. But the point to that is that they admit that they are a race of people with no known origin, and we have to be up on that. But somehow the Paris Club, the G7, the IMF, the World Bank, the UN, and others must get some direct attack from us. another point in time to come back to Newark and just to spend a week. Just to go around and look at the symbolism in the town. There's